This special monthly UBU episode on hashtag Black Mental Health is sponsored by Janssen Neuroscience and supported by The Painted Brain, a California peer-run organization. Welcome to Unapologetically Black Unicorns, or welcome back if you've been here before. This is a special episode, our hashtag Black Mental Health, and we're going to be talking about what else? Our Black mental health. Why not? Such an important topic. And I have a wonderful guest today, Dr. Kristee Haggins from Safe Black Space. And rather than me do a long bio introduction, I am going to let Dr. Kristee Haggins introduce herself. So take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, first of all, for the invitation to be here with you, to share with the listeners, and to talk a little bit about kind of what I do and who I am, and Safe Black Space and Black mental health, all of that. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. You want to know who I am. So my name is Dr. Kristee Haggins. I am a community healer, an African-centered psychologist, a professor, a consultant. I do a number of different things. But my primary position and role is as the executive director of Safe Black Space. And Safe Black Space is what I refer to as a growing, developing kind of baby nonprofit that started after the untimely death and killing of Stephon Clark here in Sacramento in 2018, 19, 20, 20. I sometimes get off in terms of my sense of time. I don't know about you, but with COVID, I'm like, what year was that? And
yes.
Where now? But that is my role. And as I mentioned, we are developing nonprofit, and our focus really is on attending to Black health and wellness, understanding the impact in particular of anti-Blackness and racism on Black people, and creating a container for us to understand what we may be experiencing, to tap into some of our kind of more ancient or cultural kind of wisdom, and to identify ways that we can cope as well as thrive in the midst of a world that in many ways does not see our humanity.
Wow. That is a heck of a lot, first of all, but so glad you're doing all of that work, especially for our Black community. And where is Safe Black Space located?
So we are housed and kind of work primarily out of the Sacramento area. As I mentioned, with Stephon Clark getting killed here, that was when I and a few other folks kind of really responded to the call to the need here locally. But with COVID, we have the capacity to really reach far beyond the Sacramento area. So our primary service and program is community healing circles, Safe Black Space, specifically for people of African ancestry, right, with a lived Black experience. And we've been able to shift them to an online format. And so we tend to offer our circles regularly every second Saturday, from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time via Zoom. And that has allowed us to have reach not only across California, but across the states and even internationally. So we have people that participate from Costa Rica, from the UK, from San Diego, from back east, from Oakland. But yes, we are housed out of Sacramento. And physically, I say housed, but we don't have a physical location, right? But myself and the majority of the team, our village of volunteers, are operating out of Northern California.
Wow. So when I first heard about Safe Black Space, I thought, I want a safe Black space, right? Because sometimes, day-to-day life, it's a little rough, as we're doing the work, as we're leading our lives, as we're helping our children, in community and so forth. So, where do we go where people will understand us from that cultural perspective? Mm-hmm. So how do people engage with Safe Black Space? Like, what does it feel like if I'm like, oh, let me look this up, and I find it on the internet, or I find it because we've had this podcast, and I want to figure out, well, how do I engage in, where do I start? What does it look like? What does it feel like?
Sure. I'll respond to that, but do want to back up and say, yeah, we do need Safe Black Space, all of us at least who identify as Black, because the world, again, as we're living in, we're facing hits from all different directions, whether it's our workplace, whether it's our education, the field, or where it is that we live. And so, again, part of what we are intending to do is to help people at least identify with how to tap into that, their internal sense of safety and comfort with their Blackness, and then figuring out, again, ways to build that sense of safety and wellness outside of course, their typical, maybe within their four walls or whatever. But if people are interested in knowing more about Safe Black Space or how to access us, they can literally just Google Safe Black Space. It'll take you to our website. We will typically, a few weeks before we are launching our next circle, we will have a flyer available, a registration link, so that folks can log into that and get registered and participate. We also do other events, and so people will have an opportunity as well to potentially, we have a book study group that we're doing. We're kind of co-hosting with a number of other organizations in the Sacramento area, African Drumming Circle. So like I mentioned, our circles are our primary service area, but we do other things. And by Googling Safe Black Space, going to our website, looking at our events page, that's where folks can kind of find out what's coming up.
So do you also connect people to and or provide psychotherapy or therapy or like all that kind of, I would say, I'll put that in the biomedical kind of frame of things?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question, because people do frequently reach out. They're looking for support, mental health therapists or providers. However, that is not what we provide. So we identify our services as more of an adjunct to therapy, more of a community-defined evidence practice, if you will, right? That is around doing what we know works for our people. But because we get frequent requests, folks who are looking for providers who look like them, who may have a better understanding of their life experiences, we have on our website a resource list. So under our resources tab, we have what we call our Mind, Body, Spirit Community Resource List. And it is Black providers who kind of fit in those areas, right? So under Mind, you'll find therapists and life coaches. Under Body, you might find physicians, a dentist, and so on and so forth. And so, again, some of them are local to the Sacramento area, but because of telehealth, people can access providers that may be doing online therapy or other services. So we try to direct people towards that as an option for looking for what it is that they may want or need.
Wow. When I think about this work and having run a nonprofit before in my other life, well, it's still this life. It was just earlier on in this life. I ran a nonprofit. And one of the things that I sort of struggled with is, number one, getting enough funding to run the organization. And number two, having to provide outcome measures that sometimes did not really align with sort of outcomes that we could achieve that were really helping people, because folks saw it as sort of something far more, I don't want to say the word traditional, I don't think that's the right word, but conventional, I think might be the word.
Okay.
So, are we seeing symptom reduction, or are we seeing, are they going to their treatment? And it's like, but what we were seeing was increase in community involvement, increase of self-esteem, increase at which all of those things are critically important to one's overall health and well-being and to their mental health. But those weren't the outcomes that the funders are looking for.
Yeah.
So how do you do that as a nonprofit, sort of align the funding to the quote unquote outcomes that also align with the community that you're serving, which is the Black community?
Right. What a great question. What I'll start with is just responding that up until maybe the past year, we really have been primarily a voluntary run organization. So we've been building towards our nonprofit status, but kind of doing the work because it feels like there's a need that can be responded to. It must be responded to for our, for bigger, greater health. However, we've been fortunate in the last year to have funding actually through the MacArthur Foundation. And so we are one of about 30 different organizations that received funding from them to really build our organizational capacity. And so we are in the midst right now of really trying to get tight and clear about how we will measure our outcomes, how we build kind of our staffing in order to scale up and continue to do this and grow the circles and the trainings and the work that we do. I'm grateful that part of what the MacArthur Foundation funding has done is it's not asking us, right, to provide specific outcomes based on the work that we're doing, but allowing us to kind of build and grow based on what we know at this point is working. However, what I will say is we are collecting, of course, demographic data and some more subjective experiences. We do ask at every circle, right, what brought people in, how they're feeling about Black racial stress and trauma, what they're taking away from the circles, and how they're feeling about being Black kind of after all of the time that we spend together. And without fail, we are seeing very positive results that people are coming for a sense of community and healing and affirmation, and their experiences when they quote unquote walk into the circle are different, right? What they report at the beginning versus the end of the circle, there's a significant shift. And so to me and to us, that's evidence of positive work and influence. And then we have returners, right? We have some people that I'm here every month because this is my form of taking care of myself, of self-care, of community. One of our volunteers, for example, was in the Sacramento, but has recently relocated to Mississippi, where she's originally from. And she just last week was like, I'm so glad you're continuing to offer these circles online. It's a lifeline for me. And so I, again, anticipate that we will continue, right, in that format, and can use some of the stories and some of the outcomes in that way to really describe what it is we're doing. And it relates to what I was saying earlier as identifying our work as more of a community-defined evidence practice, right, that isn't required, you to necessarily do all the quantitative crunching and numbers and outcomes, but to really look at, well, what does the community say is working? What are kind of more historical, ancient ways that prove that such an offering can be helpful?
Right. And I can't even speak enough to the power of stories and narratives. And I try to help remind folks, because this is, what we find in the peer community. People will say, well, that's anecdotal. That's your story, or that's a story, or that's you all story, if it's a collective group of people with lived experience. And as soon as somebody says it's anecdotal, I'll say, well, actually it's qualitative, because qualitative data is, and research is just as powerful as quantitative, and helping us actually, to think about how are we going to articulate in ways. It's almost doing a code switching. So instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to tell my story, yes, I'm going to tell my story so it can add to the qualitative information that we have about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So I'm doing a little bit of code switching with folks. We've had some people talk about the community healing circles before. Yeah, Anola aired, I think, and a few other people. But for the sake of people who are listening to this episode and not having to go back to another episode, can you talk a little bit about the community healing circles, because they are power filled?
I will say that, but I'm love that you mentioned Enola Aird, who is the founder of the Community Healing Network. So yes, Safe Black Space was actually born out of some of the work of the Community Healing Network and the Association of Black Psychologists. So to give you the history, the Emotional Emancipation Circles are another healing circle that was developed by ABPSI, Association of Black Psychologists, in collaboration with CHN. I'm a member of the Association of Black Psychologists. I'm the president, actually, of our Greater Sacramento chapter here that's just developing, and was part of the team that helped to create a racial trauma toolkit, which we developed, can't remember, 2017, after the killings of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. I'm sure you and many of the listeners remember that's like back to back, right? We were helping to promote the support of our community members some years ago. And then a year later, when Stephon Clark was killed here in Sacramento, some of my colleagues and mentors were like, girl, you better go ahead and take that toolkit, right? And kind of adapt it and use it and recreate what works for the Sacramento area to do this work. And so some of the aspects of what people may experience in the EECs, emotional emancipation circles, Ubuntu circles, Sawubona circles, those are various components that I or others have been involved in, that there's some similarity, right? And so what we, again, did with Safe Black Space is adapted it. We made it more specific to the Sacramento area, at least at that point in terms of our initial beginnings. And then I've made some intentional efforts to connect it with a particular African-centered theory of optimal psychology by Dr. Linda James Myers. So it incorporates different aspects of kind of cultural pieces that we know are healing, kind of broadly, and then specifically for Black people.
Snaps, claps, thumbs up, the whole 9 yards. That's my way of doing affirmations. I'm not snapping, clapping, and thumbing up right now, but in my mind, I am doing that. I know I'm just shooting question after question, but I was just thinking about, what you're talking about and wondering how and if any of your work is done with young people, because sometimes we get disconnected as young people, or the disconnection happens, and then we have to, as adults, reconnect.
Yeah.
So do you also work with families and young people?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I think our primary age group is adults. I think when we look at our numbers, we are attracting primarily kind of 40-ish African-American women who participate. But what's so interesting, I'm going to respond in maybe 3 different answers to your question, which I love seeing. It's been a little bit ago now, but I was mentioning that we are doing virtual circles, and there was one circle in particular where there was a daughter who was maybe 18. Then her mom was also on the line, and so she was maybe a little more middle-aged. I think she was maybe in her 40s or so, or 50s. And then grandma, right, who was apparently like in her 70s. So see, all on one screen, right, this intergenerational connection to this work was super, super powerful. And to have each of them in their own way talk about how significant it was pretty amazing. And that kind of one of the most recent things that we've done was actually a special circle for a community center here in Sacramento. It's called Roberts Family Development Center. It's in Del Paso Heights. And they invited us to come and do a circle specifically for their staff, who are young adults. Just did it this past weekend. And they were like, okay, we need you to come back. This was so helpful. And so although, again, we weren't working specifically with, those high school students, we were kind of the pipeline to make sure that those 20, 25-year-olds that have their capacity and the ability to go and do that support. Because as I'm sure doing the work of serving and healing, it is taxing and it is difficult. And to have an opportunity to be held and supported in kind of a sacred space is really important.
Yes, exactly. And so how did you actually get into becoming a psychologist? Because I think, we also want to look at, as we're talking about, hashtag Black mental health, we're also talking about the different roles Black folk can play, not only in taking care of their health and wellness, but where can I play a role? What should I think about my education? And we have a dearth of psychologists and psychiatrists and pharmacists who are Black. So how did you get into the work?
Yeah, well, I will definitely echo what you're saying. We need so many more of us in all the different avenues of support that are available. And I think within psychologists, our numbers are maybe 4% are African American. So it's low. And my journey is, to be transparent, was I was struggling as well with my own kind of mental health, my own depression, suicidal behaviors, in part because I felt so disconnected from myself. I didn't know who to talk to. As I was working through that, I won't necessarily say where I went to undergrad, but what I will say is during my undergrad experience, I didn't even realize that there was a counseling center. I didn't realize, right, that there was this place that I could go to get support if I needed it. And then if I did, that there wasn't really anybody that looked like me or reflected my experience. And so I made a decision as an undergrad. I switched my major multiple times, originally thinking I was going to be a pediatrician and then maybe a teacher, and then landed in psychology after my challenges, because I was like, look, I want to, of course, be healthy and recover as best as I can. And then I want to be a resource, a tool, an instrument to other people who, again, may or may not even be aware that they can get support, or what they might be struggling with. And so it was a very kind of intentional shift in me and my, consciousness around how I wanted to show up in the world, and what I saw as my purpose.
Mm-hmm. And, as we think about encouraging others to think about that path, it's not an easy one and it's kind of sort of a long one. But what kind of things do you think they should be thinking about, even as 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds, or even returning? Because I was a returning student at practically 30. So, to get my undergraduate degree and then to go on and get a graduate degree. So my psychology degree is IO psychology, not clinical. But anyway, yeah, how do we help people think about sort of what it takes to beyond the passion, right? To kind of enter in and do this work.
Well, I have a few different responses. So my first is to acknowledge that there are ways that people can help, whether or not they get an advanced degree or, go to graduate school in clinical psychology or counseling psychology or social work, right? That there are ways, as we're talking about peer providers or other paraprofessionals, that can still offer, I think, many ways, support, again, that can sometimes be parallel with
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote professional providers. So that's the one thing I wanted to make sure to say. I think, the other piece in terms of thoughts about pursuing, education or psychology, let's say becoming a psychologist. So part of is what I just spoke to around just my own awareness of some of the struggles I was having, and then my commitment to my growth and my recovery and my own treatment, so that I could be clear and clean to do the work. And so what I mean by that is there's, again, plenty of people who are doing the work who may have a history of mental illness or particular disorders, but they're managing them well. And so that's key, right? That if we go into a profession and we're hurt and continue maybe to be traumatized, then we may not be as an effective vessel as we want to be. So that would be one consideration, is like, all right, if this is what you want to do, just you can do your own self work so that you can be available to do the work with someone else. And then my other and maybe final comment is, if you go to grad school or you're pursuing that education, number one, to find a mentor if possible, right? Someone either on that campus or in that program who gets it, who gets you, who can be a resource and a support for you. And, part of that as well is being clear about kind of what the expectations are, so that you can make adaptations as you might need to your life, to your schedule, to the demands. Because as you mentioned, it is not an easy road for psychologists in particular. The path is usually 4 years of undergrad, so you get your bachelor's degree. And then depending on the program, I went to The Ohio State University in their counseling psychology program, but you can get a master's, right? That usually takes about 2 years. And then a PhD, mine was a master's and PhD combined program. So I did both within 5 years, but 2 years master's and 3 to 4 years to get your doctorate, which may include, if you're doing a practical clinical program, doing practicum, getting experience providing therapy, maybe writing a dissertation, a big, huge paper or a master's thesis. And then post-graduation, still, if you're wanting to become licensed at least and operate as a psychologist, doing a year of a postdoctoral training, similar to what medical professionals do, right? And so it can take a huge commitment, sometimes way too much money, and definitely a lot of time. And so we need more of us. What I will say in closing to this question is, I mentioned I'm the new president of the Association of Black Psychologists, our Greater Sacramento chapter, which are really trying to get off the ground. And there are maybe 3 colleagues of mine that are all psychologists, Black psychologists, who in the last couple 6 months have been like, I'm moving out of this field, I'm doing something new. I think in part it's a bit of burnout and overwhelm. And so that kind of hurts my heart because I'm like, wait, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 kind
Oh
of therapists,
no.
right, that I might have referred to that are no longer either doing the work or they're moving out and on to other things. And so that's why I'm like, oh yeah, we need some of our younger folks and wherever you are in your lifetime, but folks who want to do this and
Yeah.
to do it in a way, my push would be to do it in a way that goes beyond the more traditional, contemporary, mainstream ways of doing therapy. Not that because we have to do that training, right, to get licensed, to pass the exams and all of that, but to ensure that we are clear about what we need as Black people. And that may not always be the same as what we are taught
Yes.
in the books.
Again, snaps, claps, all of the thumbs up. I couldn't agree more. And, I think parallel, we're finding this in our peer workforce too, that,
Mhm.
even though it's not years and years and years of study, but it is years and years of life experience that you're pouring into becoming a peer and using that life experience along with the training. Yet we also have to be mindful of the toll that it can take, and not just on, well, wait, why is the system making us do it this way? And this way we know may be not as helpful to people, but also taking into consideration the intersection of, having lived experience and being a person of color and, trying to put all of that together and do the work in ways that may not look as conventional as, most people would think. I'm going to ask one other question because I'm dying to know. I want to know about the drumming circles. I
Mm,
just, oh my gosh, like never done a drumming circle. I do have tons of drums in my music room
mm.
because, actually, when I was hospitalized, there was a music therapist at the hospital. And they used all sorts of music, including drums, as a way to engage patients, both in the inpatient as well as in the intensive outpatient program. So, can you talk a little bit about sort of what you do with drums and drumming circles and why that's helpful to people?
Yeah, I first of all, I want to just call this quote that comes to mind with the image of drumming happening with the idea that I wasn't born in Africa, but Africa was born in me. And I just love that. I have a t-shirt with that
Yes.
and everything, right? So there's yes, this essence of Africanness, I think that is innate, and drumming is a part of that. And so there is a place in which we use drumming, particularly in our in-person circles, kind of as our call to order, as the backdrop as we pour libation and honor our ancestors. And so it's a something that happens that shifts in our, I believe, our kind of biology and in our chemistry, and that allows us to find the rhythm and to move and to heal. And so that's one of the reasons why we encourage and use drumming for our circles, but just recognizing that the power of that. And I haven't had the opportunity to attend the one in Leimert Park. I know in New York, there's kind of just common, regular drum circles.
Yeah.
And so we want to be part of that process here.
Awesome. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I love that quote. And I'm also a member of the Muskogee Nation. So drums are also very important as part of my indigenous part of my life too, right? And so, our saying is that, drums are about the heartbeat. So it's very similar to that kind of, even though that's not what I grew up with. Matter of fact, it's a very complicated relationship, but it's not what I grew up with, but it's a part of who I am, right? And you can feel it immediately. So as soon as you hear the drum, something happens, like the shivers, the chicken skin, whatever the terms are that we use for kind of that, this like, oh yeah, look, wake up, you've just been woken up, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you're moving into that essence of who you are, even if you don't know that that's who you are. It's kind of cool.
So,
So,
mhm.
as we wrap up, I want to make sure that if there's any, I call it wisdom dropping, drop
Mm,
lots of wisdom and information throughout our conversation. But if there's any one last thing that you want to leave our listeners with, piece of wisdom, action, thought, it's time to do it. What
All
would you
right.
like to share?
Well, what comes to mind most immediately is this idea. I'm just going to say it, which is like, do you, boo, right? Do you, boo. And by that, I really mean like the more that we can connect to our authentic selves, and particularly, right, knowing this is addressing Black mental health, like in our beautiful Blackness, that there is so much power in that, in embracing who we are and claiming our value and supporting not only our own kind of personal experiences in our lives, but we tend as a people to be a very collective people. And so knowing that as I'm healing myself and I'm taking care of myself and I'm doing me, that in fact I am helping to heal my family, my community, it's much bigger than that. And so although I say that a little lightheartedly, right? Like, do you, boo? It really is. Be your authentic, beautiful Black self. Ask for help when you need it. Give support when you see it's needed. And just show up. Keep showing up. And keep hope alive. And stay
Yeah.
Black and proud. And all the other kind of things I could say. But I think I'll close
Right.
out.
That is fantastic. Fantastic. You be, mine is you be you. That's why it is unapologetically Black
Mhm.
Unicorn. So I could actually make it shorter into you be you. Go, be you, be authentically you. So thank you for sharing those beautiful words of wisdom to close this out. And for all of our listeners, this is, something that more people need to hear. So please remember to subscribe. Course, listen, first of all, but you've already listened in if you've gotten this far. So subscribe, share, comment. More people need to hear this kind of information, and join us next time on Unapologetically Black Unicorns and #Black Mental Health. Thanks so much for joining again, Dr. Kristee.
Thanks for having me.